Benvenuti alla nuova puntata di Meet&Speak. Siamo qui al Druso di Bergamo per intervistare Geoff Tate, cantante storico dei Queensryche. Andiamo a fare due chiacchiere con lui. So, Mr. Tate, you're one of the greatest singers of rock and metal music. What are three keywords that define you?
Well, I tried not to be defined, really. I think I've made a pretty good career out of it, actually. I never was interested in being defined, especially by other people, So I've sort of written albums about things that I'm interested in, and I never have been part of a club or a team, really. So that's just me.
You've toured many times around the world. Do you think that there is a difference between the crowd of today and the crowd you've met in the 80s, 90s? What is your feeling about it? Do you think that the crowd is more enthusiastic today or was more enthusiastic in the 80s, 90s?
Well, in the 80s and 90s, we were all very young. So we were all very enthusiastic. And now we're older. Most of my audience is older. So we're less energetic. And we tend to watch and appreciate the music rather than participate,
So it's more an intellectual moment or a good feeling moment for the crowd.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also sort of a journey back into their youth, that they experience when they hear songs they know, and that's always enjoyable,
Operation Mindcrime was the rock metal opera of the 80s. What was the process of creation back then?
What was the process of creation? Well, it's sort of hard to define inspiration. I think it's something you have to learn to recognize when it's happening. And when it is happening, you should try to devote all your energies to grabbing hold of it and making something of it. And if that means staying up all night working on something, or staying up, 4 days in a row because you can't let the idea go, then that's probably what you should do, So many times we don't recognize, I think, that we are being inspired, and moments pass by us all the time, So with the Mindcrime story, it all happened very quickly, sitting in a church in Montreal, Quebec, back in 1987. There I was, and I wrote it all down. Luckily, I carried back then a little pad of paper and a pencil, and sat in the church and wrote it all down and made a record out of it.
You've written it in a church. Is it because you're a religious type of writer, or is it because of the place gives you inspiration?
Well, I went to the corner store to get some groceries, and it was the middle of winter. It was very snowy and cold. And I heard voices, like a choir, coming from the church across the street. And I love choir music. So I went to the church and sat and listened to them sing. And then it hit me, And I think a lot of the storyline was due to the fact that I had been experiencing experiences for a while that kind of culminated in the inspiration for the album. People I'd met in Montreal, for example, were part of the FLQ, who were trying to liberate themselves from the province of Quebec. They're trying to be all French-speaking, And so that was inspiring to me. The character of Sister Mary, I met her visually and she was dancing in a bar in I think it was Bucharest to loud disco music one night, and she became the inspiration for the Mary character. So all these things kind of build up, you know, and but then you have a moment of where everything hits you, you know, like a lightning bolt, so to speak, and you need to be ready to record it, you know.
Your latest trilogy is about cryptocurrency and nowadays technology. How was the process of creation about these themes? Was it
The same, really? It's interests I have, you know, experiences I have, things I read, in the news. I try to keep up current with what's happening in the world and different places I travel, and all of that really kind of comes together when you're making an album, I think, and especially if you're trying to tell a story. You kind of pull from all these different sources of information that you pack away in your head, you know, and it's the same process that Mindcrime had, you know, where it all just kind of builds up until something sets you off and you start working on it, you know.
So I see a negative pattern in Mindcrime and in the latest trilogy. Do you think that the future holds a bad vibe, or there is some kind of light in the future for us as mankind?
Well, I hope it is. Yeah, I hope there is. You know, the thing is that we make mistakes when we judge other people, and the fact that we judge them and expect them to be of the same mindset we are. And most oftentimes they're not, you know, and we assume that people think in terms of being generous, or that they have some sort of philosophical beliefs of what is good and what is bad. But most of the time they don't, you know, and so we're always surprised when terrible things happen. But really, terrible things happen all the time, you know, and it's just the way of mankind. We don't all grow at the same rate. We don't all understand things in the same way, and it's too bad that we're all not enlightened, you know. But it is the way it is.
You've toured many times here in Italy. Do you have some really great memory here, or?
Lots of great memories. Yeah, I've been coming to Italy pretty regularly since the early 80s, and have made friends here, and people I see regularly, you know, as I travel. And yeah, I love it here. It's a wonderful country and beautiful. I was talking today about all the places I'd like to go in Italy and see, because I've only been to probably 14 or 15 cities in Italy, you know, and there's so much more to see, you know, so much more of the country that fascinates me.
When you tour, do you find the time to travel around the city you tour in? For example, yesterday you were in Venice, and the other day in Roma. So have you ever visited that cities, or is it complicated with the touring?
Yeah, we try to schedule it so we have a day or two in a city if we can. Sometimes we can't, but sometimes one day is all you need to inspire you to come back and visit again. And my wife and I have spent weeks walking through Rome and Venice, before Florence as well, all the great Italian cities, Milano as well. And it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Greatest restaurants in the world. Sorry, Paris.
Do you have any good tips for young musicians and young bands that try to make it in today's music industry?
I would say follow your heart and try to make good decisions. Educate yourself in business, and try to figure out a marketing campaign if you can. It's pretty tough world out there in the music industry these days, and the old methods of doing things don't typically work anymore. But there's all kinds of exciting new mediums, like TikTok, for example, is launching people's careers right and left.
Are you on TikTok?
I'm not, but I've just sort of started looking at it, and it's fascinating. It's another platform in which to market yourself and what you do, and I think a lot of young musicians will probably gravitate towards that,
So you think that the biggest flaw for a young musician try to make it is not to educate himself or herself?
Well, I think a lot of times as a musician, you're so caught up in the music that that's just one part of being a musician. You have to be able to network. You have to be able to understand how the business end of it works, and you have to understand marketing. And so often we get caught up in just playing our instrument, and it's unfortunately not enough. You need to know those other things as well.
Back in the 80s, 90s, how did you market yourself? Did you make all this network stuff you talk about right now?
It wasn't such an issue back then because music and the music industry was very well established and had marketing teams of people. And they spent a lot of money marketing the bands or the artists that they had signed. So it really wasn't up to the musicians so much. That started happening more in the 2000s, where we had to actively put a hands-on approach to marketing ourselves because the record companies were going out of business right and left, So, back then it was a different thing. You couldn't even compare the industry to what it is now. It's night and day, apples and oranges, as we say.
So do you think that today's industry is in bad shape compared to yesterday music industry?
It's so different. So you can't even compare it. There was so much money in the industry back then. It employed thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world. These huge multinational companies distributed music and sold music. And today, just a handful of companies do that, And it's just shrunk. Everything has gotten smaller. And in a way, it's for people my age, it's kind of a tragedy, because we remember how it was, and it really worked well. But today's industry is different, and it requires just a different outlook on how to maneuver within it,
What are your plans for the future? Do you have any new releases around the corner?
Well, this year I'm going to be touring till the end of the year, and I think we're doing a tour of America starting after the first of the year. And no new music yet. Working on some things, but don't have a plan on releasing anything at the moment.
But are you collaborating with some? Do you have in mind some musician artists to collaborate with? Because I've read that you prefer to collaborate nowadays with new artists. Also, good friends as the guitarist of Megadeth. No, is it?
Yeah, I haven't. Nothing I can talk about at the moment. But after the first of the year, I'll have stories to tell.
Thank you very much for the interview. And can you say hi to our followers on Rocker TV?
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here in Italy and hope to see you again.
Amici di Rocker TV, qui è tutto dal Druso. Ci vediamo alla prossima puntata di Meet and Speak.